Cool. So, welcome, Catherine.
Thank you.
Could you explain a little bit about your art practice currently, please, too?
Yes, well, it's currently going in many different directions, but with a common core. Text is often the starting point. I break down text, I translate it into different forms. So I've even got one upside down. That one is meant to go this way. So the form of text is often within the painting. Such as here, we've got kind of the form of gestural handwriting underneath. That was from many years ago, actually, probably 4 years ago. And quite often, if it's not doing anything when I revisit it, I'll just work on top of it, and it's quite an intuitive process, and I'm quite often responding to the textures that are already there. I really love working on canvas. There's just something about these I've started really on kind of raw canvas that I'm primed. Just love that texture. And part of my way of thinking about what I do is I listen. So it's a really maybe odd way of putting it, but I listen to the surface. So I wear incredibly flat shoes, so when I'm walking, I'm paying a lot of attention to the landscape on a big scale, but also the detail of what I'm treading on. And that's one of the ideas thinking there, kind of theoretically, is to do with control and influence, how we might be affected by sometimes the most minute aspects of our environment and culture. It doesn't have to be a big thing to really affect you. Anyway, so that's quite an intuitive process there. This specific painting here, these forms are kind of growing out of the land, and they're kind of, I'm fusing what I think about people and plants. So it's like groups of people talking to each other. This is just things that go through my mind when I'm, pushing the paint across the canvas. And also there was a small painting by Paul Nash in his recent Tate exhibition, which I got a little bit fixated on because I could not find an image of it online anywhere. And I quite like it when that happens, actually. And then his featured horsetails, so prehistoric plants that actually are weeds in our gardens quite often. But that was coming into it. But the kind of wider practice, so I blog, and a couple of years ago somebody turned a couple of my blog entries into song. So a musician, Tim Dowling, and I often take issues like the issue of libraries and the way they're being withdrawn across the country. We've lost like 11% in Wales, 2% in England, and that is a lot of social space and place to feel kind of welcome that we're losing. And so last year I collaborated with lots of different people, so a gardening group, students from Hereford College of Arts, musician, all sorts of people, and performed the Lost Library Border Country, so at the Eisteddfod, and translation actually was really interesting from my interest in text, and I was not allowed to perform in English. Like, I had a speech I'd prepared and it worked really well in English, and it had to be translated, and I had to find a Welsh speaker to perform it for me, and I was finding that in actual fact people weren't understanding what on earth, even though they were learning Welsh, they couldn't understand it fully. And so I created a translation device, and just like text scrolling at the bottom of the screen, but this was out of paper with the English, and I was getting lots of looks of appreciation.
Do you think that made it worth it, the kind of appreciation from the people, that you took all that time and effort to get that result?
Just sometimes a little glimpse in someone's eye of recognition of what you're trying to do, because there are lots of great things going on at the Eisteddfod, but as an English speaker, somebody who only speaks a few words of Welsh, You can see there's so much there, but you can't necessarily understand it all. You really need a pal who speaks Welsh to help you get that. So, yeah. I don't know, I think I have a tendency to talk detailed rather than the bigger picture of my practice. So quite in my practice, I've often focused on valuing the exchange that happens with art. So exchange between artists, but also exchange between artists and other professionals, or just anyone around.
Do you want to explain a little bit about Art Bubble, the kind of artist in conversation, how you made that happen, basically?
Well, the beginning came about fairly accidentally because I'm passionate about talking about art and really understanding different artist practices. So I decided to set up an art critique in Abergavenny, which spectacularly failed and nobody turned up. So I got my mobile phone out and filmed myself doing a miniature critique on my own work. Actually, before that, I pretended to be David Attenborough, and I was looking for this really rare creature, the artist in Abergavenny. It's not that rare in Abergavenny, there are lots. They just maybe don't want to talk about their art that much. They're quite happy doing their own thing. And then that kind of planted a seed in my mind that, in fact, I could go and interview artists. And I get a lot from the one-to-one talking to people. Sometimes I think in groups, some people don't get to speak when actually they've got a lot to say. And it's often those that are not speaking that really would add huge value. So by talking one-to-one, whether the artist is relatively shy or not, we both get this kind of pub banter that is really missing from modern culture. I don't mean just for artists, I think. I don't know. Pubs, like libraries, we're losing pubs. But also, it's really expensive for many people. If you want to go out 3 times a night and have a drink, that actually costs quite a lot. And I quite like it's all ideas and notions kind of with me. I love the idea that there could be this culture, but that with modern media, and things are changing all the time, there's huge potential, and we don't know how technology is going to develop, but what we've got now, we've got portals through YouTube, Vimeo, all these other video hosting sites to see into worlds that you're interested in. It used to be magazines, and there wasn't really the YouTube when I was first painting, so it was an art network magazine. It was my portal, but video just gives you, I think, so much more potential.
That's interesting. Do you think this kind of conversation is a very socially directed kind of endeavour, and you want to bring that to more people as well as yourself in your own practice?
Yeah, I would like to share artists, what we're doing, so the artists I'm talking to, and some of my work comes into the conversation with wider audiences. So really, by having these conversations publicly available, it means people that maybe otherwise wouldn't know what questions to ask can see somebody in a quite relaxed conversation with an artist. Even though I'm an artist myself, the questions I'm asking aren't rocket science. And you don't need to know the big words. And if somebody brings in some strange art term that maybe only we know, we'll use the conversation to explain what we mean. Because I think it's really important not to create barriers. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important, not to kind of ostracise anyone if they don't understand the art world, or art language can be quite intimidating, I think, sometimes. So
and heavy. It can be really heavy, and use 3 long art word terms in a sentence and you've lost quite a few people.
Yeah.
And there's no need. If you have to use those terms, do you really know what you're talking about? You should be able to talk concisely and get your message across to anybody. That's what I believe.
Do you think that your studio practice, so kind of your painting and your walking and using text and things, do you think that complements your kind of curatorial endeavour, I suppose, your conversations, or do you see them as separate things, kind of separate entities that you kind of do one thing one time and then, or do they merge together somehow?
It's a constantly evolving group of activities, and at any one time one thing might take over, but in actual fact it's like threads woven in a blanket, so different parts surface at different times. The other things are still there, so the other colours, the other parts of the practice, like I might not paint for a month, but I'm working towards performance and writing and having conversations with people and editing, but the painting is still very much there. And I've got a stack of 254 miniature paintings, which I'm really interested in writing and taking writing from the physical, from being text to the physical world. So these miniature paintings, they had the starting point of a word that I didn't know. I wanted to bathe myself in my own ignorance. And so I created a TP and I pricked these words out. And on a very hot, bright May day, got within this TP structure and this light was projected onto me. And so I was bathing in my own ignorance. And then I moved on to respond to each word through paint. Started off big, but in the end decided to go for the business card size on calico. And so you have a word and then you have a little painting, and now those little paintings are going with me on painting walks. So I will photograph them. It could be locally, it could be wherever I've travelled to, and so there'll be the painting with in a different context, and then I'll write about it. So it's posted on Instagram, and then I'll write something about the whole experience. It's a little bit undefined, but what I'm playing with is going from text to visual to text to visual, and just continuing this oscillation to see how much I can blur the boundaries, really.
Interesting. So you use a lot of different mediums, and you wouldn't say that you're specifically in one kind of, I suppose, category, or you don't box yourself in, essentially?
No, I don't box myself in. I resist being called a painter, but I have painted all my life, from age 4, a beautiful watercolour set I used that was my nan's, and she got me painting horses and flowers and whatnot. And it has always been something I've gone back to. You have busy periods of your life where you do other things, science, running, canoeing, all these other things that are very exciting, but I always come back to the drawing and painting. I don't know whether it's relevant, but I didn't really read until I was 12. And then when I was 12, I read everything I could lay my hands on, and I haven't stopped. So I don't know whether that has affected my relationship with text, is why I've focused on it so much. I also have another thing, I have slight synesthesia with letters. I see them as male or female. Or at least I did in my childhood, and I still do. And I think with all the text I've been doing and the loosening of handwriting, everything's getting very blurred with text. So sometimes I look at text, I can't see anything.
Do you think is that exciting to you then? And do you care what people think about that, or does that drive your work even further?
I think it's what comes from within is the strongest. You've got to kind of cut away the layers of understanding yourself through other people. Just take those layers away until you get to your core. Because I've heard this phrase that if a cell divides and grows by itself, that form, think about that form compared to a cell that is cut or broken. So if it's outside forces that are shaping you, you could be broken. You could, it's raw, it's not ideal, it's not organic, certainly. But if you've grown yourself, that is a very different form. And yeah, it's not an easy process. because we've got lots of expectation, the culture, all this we're moving through all the time. Yeah, expectations are really hard sometimes to handle.
Yeah, we can kind of shape what we do sometimes, even without realising. You know, sometimes, even if we don't want to kind of play to people's expectations, I think we do that unintentionally.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
So, how do you see your title or your role then? Would you say you're an artist curator or artist discusser? Do you have something?
Artist producer. I produce things, and whether it be paintings, writing that you can't read quite often, or videos of conversations. I'm finding the video conversations are so alive because you can hear tones in voices, whereas in text there's so much of the population who that would just turn away, and also text can be understood so many different ways, and everybody brings their own experience into it, and like email conversations you have where you both have the wrong end of the stick, that just you end up thinking you've done something wrong and nothing, like you just haven't understood each other, whereas face to face or the verbal inflections really help, I think.
Definitely. I think it gives a sense of like intimacy as well. I think when you're communicating through email or over text, you don't get that kind of personal connection with someone, whereas when you're face to face, like you said, you read body language, there's so many different elements.
It all comes into it so
absolutely,
much.
Yeah.
Some of the things I'm doing is trying to turn text into movement, which is something at the moment which is I'm really finding a huge challenge. I haven't as such done it yet. The Lost Library of Abergavenny was my first attempt, and it did it in one way, but it wasn't fundamentally what I was intending. It was shaped by the possibilities of where I was at the time, and I think it was really interesting what that brought out. So I was giving away text from a locally based book, printed on a great big roll of paper, and seedlings of plants that were mentioned within the book. So little gem, chrysanthemums, what else is there? Sweet peas, they didn't work very well, wrong time of year, but giving away these seedlings and text to people, and I found that was very interesting, and I was left with quite a lot of seedlings after the event, and what I'm realising quite often with art, what you think is the art isn't always the art. So the performance, yes, it was the art, but it was really only the start. And what I did afterwards with all those seedlings, I went around to my neighbours and I said, would you like a few little gems to pop in your garden? And I hadn't ever spoken to many. These are in cul-de-sacs, like really near to me, and they were offering all sorts of things in return. I thought, that's amazing. I wouldn't expect that, because usually someone knocks on your door, they want to persuade you of their religion, or they want you to sign up for double or triple glazing or whatnot, and which is all very irritating. But to have someone on your doorstep giving you a plant, it only really happens if that's someone you know, usually. So I thought, well, why don't I carry it on, try doing that to whole kind of streets and just see what happens. Even if nothing happens, there might be one exchange that is interesting that I would take on and evolve that into another piece, perhaps. One person about the art bubble a bit.
Yeah, do you want to... I think I did have a question for that. Do you think that it's important for artists to kind of get to hear these discussions and be a part of them? Do you think people learn like that better than just kind of zoning in onto their own independent work?
I think it can only make what they do stronger I think if you're not a part of this dialogue, you're not only missing out, but you're isolating yourself and your ideas. I think your ideas are only as strong as the kind of number of sources. You've got to have loads of sources, and if you can add to those sources through videos, watching dialogues, reading, any different sources, it's only a good thing.
And the last question, what are you most excited about in your practice currently, and where do you kind of What kind of direction do you see your work taking?
Well, excited and really very nervous about the prospect of turning the text in some way, or the ideas I'm playing with, so you've got contours and text and lines, a kind of a thread that I'm following at the moment, and turning that into movement. I'll be recording myself doing this in a place of lots of contours. Just really nervous about how it will turn out, but I think that's a good thing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for